Gordon Margaret, come here, look. And again, just like the members, I just want to join with you in paying tribute to Senator Norris. It was a great privilege to be here to take this bill this afternoon and to be there for the unveiling of that beautiful portrait. He's a hero of mine, an absolute hero for many reasons, heritage being one of them. And just a couple of things before I come in, just in terms of responses to the contributions, and then just to give the departmental spiel on it. I've found this article, just David Norris, on 40 years of saving North Great George's Street. And I think it's reflective in the points made about Mountjoy Square as well. Sometimes it takes a positive contagion for one premises owner to be a champion, and then that spreads out across the street. And he said in the mid-1970s, I was running a gay disco in Parnell Square. Numbers began to fall dramatically, and it turned out that two enterprising capitalists had opened a commercial disco just around the corner. I had never heard of North Great George's Street, but I went around, cased the joint. Once in the street, I fell in love with it and decided to purchase a house, which I did in the autumn of 1978. And that began his love affair with George in Dublin. I'm sure it was a love affair that he had for many years, but I think he met with other residents, Brendan and Josephine O'Connell, who were repairing a house, and they received a small grant from the Heritage Council, and they wanted to put it into individual grants, and he said, no, we'll blow it all on an exhibition, and they did. And that really highlighted the real chronic crisis that had taken place around the decay. And I think it's so forward-thinking from that time, and so visionary from David Norris, that from that time in 1978 to bring us here today to 2022 to this really fantastic piece of legislation that he's brought forward. Senators would have also received correspondence from Geraldine Walsh and Graham Hickey of Dublin Civic Trust and Ian Lumley of An Taisce. And I think in that correspondence it said over the last decade we have witnessed increasing numbers of protected structures and properties within architectural conservation areas being damaged through unauthorised development, including the removal of original fixtures and fittings, inappropriate replacement of historic features and occasionally wholesale demolition, without any recourse to the existing provisions of Part 4 of the Act. Some cases involve speculators acquiring properties from vulture funds or a distressed loan sales, while others consist of old-fashioned gutting for a substandard residential subdivision. And again, that letter goes on to outline why Dublin Civic Trust feel it's hugely important that this bill is supported. And just to say that both, before I respond to the bill formally, we will be taking the bill and this correspondence from Dublin Civic Trust to inform the planning review. I want to just give that commitment as well. And just the contributions, a number of members have mentioned Mountjoy Square, and I was fortunate to meet with Mountjoy Square residents last year, I think sometime, and we had a fantastic day there with Dublin Civic Trust as well. There is a Kilkenny connection. The railings that were conserved around the square and the glass-blown lanterns, two of which are back reinstated. I think there were 26 originally. Both were carried out by two Kilkenny companies. One, the ironmongery was in Castlecomer, and Jerpoint Glass carried out the glass blowing. So there's a great connection of that point that was raised by Senator Higgins in relation to traditional skills. This is not just a twee side event. Built heritage is something that should become central to what we do, to our housing policy, to housing solutions, to climate solutions, to social cohesion solutions, and I think that's why this bill is hugely important. I suppose Senator Fitzpatrick had mentioned that as well around Mountjoy Square, and I'd love to be able to get up to that event. Unfortunately, I won't be able to this Sunday. But just say, I suppose as well, just a number of initiatives that are taking place in the context of the enabling, because we're looking at the carrot and the stick, and over the last number of months we've launched our Places for People, our national policy for architecture, a vernacular strategy to conserve our traditional buildings, and particular thatched buildings. I set up a working group to look at the issues around thatched buildings as well. The NIH is still informing the record of protected structures for local authorities. I think over 1,400 have been submitted to Dublin City Council alone in the last tranche. And just again to pay tribute to our Built Heritage section in the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, and our local authorities, the conservation officers that are there. But we also run quite a number of grant schemes, really good ones: Built Heritage Investment Scheme, Historic Structures Fund, the Historic Towns Initiative led by the Heritage Council, and we support the Irish Georgian Society, Irish Follies Trust, Heritage Council, Irish Landmark Trust. So there's a whole broad range of actors in this space that are working collectively to really bring about a cohesion. And we do need to look at the grant schemes in particular and see where they could be more effective, I think, as well. We do need to ramp up, I think, significantly the support for the owners of heritage properties to enable them to be able to put them back into productive use. And we're also participating in the new European Bauhaus around architecture as well. So there's a lot of really positive elements happening. And again, I support the points raised by Senator Moynihan and Senator Higgins around against demolition of particularly industrial heritage. We're losing some really fantastic 20th century buildings. For what reason, I don't know, but could all be repurposed. Again, I just want to thank all the members for their contributions and to say that it is a great privilege to be here on behalf of the government to speak to this bill that brought forward by Senator Norris and co-sponsors. I'll just give the formal response and then I'll just close if that's okay. And again, firstly, to take the opportunity to commend Senator Norris for his long-standing commitment in built heritage, and I do share his commitment to the conservation and protection of Ireland's built heritage, and such I'm always open to proposals that further share this cause. The purpose of this bill is to amend the Planning and Development Acts to improve the level of protection afforded to Ireland's built heritage. This is an aim which is aligned with the commitments of the Government, and for this reason the Government has agreed not to oppose the bill. The bill seeks to ensure that the protection afforded to Ireland's built heritage and the expertise available to support that protection are based on the existence of effective expertise within planning authorities and on Bord Pleanála. The bill also aims to strengthen the protection afforded by architectural conservation area designation and to increase the enforcement mechanisms and penalties for breaches of planning legislation leading to damage to built heritage. Whilst agreeing broadly with the intentions behind the bill, I would like to note to the Seanad that these are areas which are currently under examination through the comprehensive review and consolidation of planning legislation currently underway. The review is being led by the Attorney-General, and it is intended that it will be completed by September to allow the revised legislation to be enacted by the end of the year. This review is the most comprehensive review of the Planning Act since it was first drafted. Its key aim is to ensure that the provisions align with policy and are more accessible and streamlined from a legal perspective. The Planning and Development Act passed in 2000 and has been amended many times, and as a result can be somewhat impenetrable for public and practitioners alike. The review will therefore bring increased clarity and streamlining of the legislation, a chronological format for process with clear signposts to other sections of legislation, improved coherence and usability of procedures, completeness of transposition of EU directives, and adherence to constitutional requirements. These aims will be achieved whilst also respecting the key role of public participation in the planning system. I know that's something Senator Boyan and I share a very strong desire to see happen. Ireland is fortunate to have a planning system which enables considerable public participation, but this needs to build on that to ensure that our planning legislation is fit for a modern era. However, through this review, we want to ensure that major debate is focused on the plan-making rather than on planning application stage to facilitate greater clarity and long-term visibility in planning outcomes. Adequate account must also be taken of the needs of the future population of new and expanded communities, as well as the needs of existing communities. We must also take into account of the nature of planning decisions, which require careful balancing of public policy, public participation and environmental issues. To this end, the working group appointed by the Attorney-General are currently examining all provisions in the Planning and Development Act, including those related to architectural heritage, in consultation with the Department, and will then draft revised and updated provisions. In this context, colleagues here in the Seanad should also be aware that the issues addressed in parts 3, 4 and 5 of Senator Norris's bill are also being examined under the review. For example, as part of this work, the Attorney-General's working group are considering the recommendations of a review of Part 4 of the Act undertaken in 2016 by the then Departments of Art, Heritage, Rural and Gaeltacht Affairs. Included in the recommendations are provisions relating to architectural conservation areas and register of protected structures, and the working group will, where appropriate, incorporate them into any revised text. The planning review is also examining the legislative provisions in relation to Bord Pleanála enforcement and development plans. As part of the review, my department is also engaging with stakeholders with regard to the review, and in this regard has established a planning advisory forum consisting of representatives from a broad range of sectors, including the public sector, business, environmental, social and knowledge-based sectors. The forum members have an opportunity to discuss issues arising from the review in relation to architectural heritage. I would point out that the Heritage Council are represented on the forum, and officials from my department have also consulted directly with them on emerging issues. Part 2 of the bill contains provisions relating to the role and function of architectural conservation officers in planning authorities, including minimum qualification requirements for the post. It provides that planning authorities must have regard for the observations of architectural conservation officers in relation to their planning activities and permits them to raise specific concerns about specific structures with the CE of the planning authority. It requires the Chief Executive of Planning Authority to publish an annual report dealing with conservation and management of the built heritage within its functional area. It also provides for the appointment of a National Built Heritage Conservation Officer to advise Government and the Minister on architectural conservation issues. I would like to take this opportunity to note that further consideration should be given to these particular proposals. In particular, it should be noted, in relation to local authority staffing matters, that there are already provisions in the Local Government Act for 2001 for setting of qualifications for the local government sector, and the power set for such qualifications is assigned to the appropriate minister. It would not be appropriate to create a separate process to set out qualifications for architectural conservation officers, to set educational requirements for specified directors of services to take power from the appropriate minister, and to enshrine specific qualifications in primary legislation. The Local Government Act also provides that Chief Executive is responsible for staffing matters. Provisions of the proposed bill would seek to take that role as it relates to architectural conservation officers and the new role envisaged of building at-risk officers. However, I just want to state as well that I have met with the Association of Architectural Conservation Officers, and I am of the view that the association needs to be given recognition. It's not formally recognised by CCMA, and I want to see that addressed. Also, we have different grades of ACOs in local authorities. Some are at senior executive, some are at executive grade, and I do think we need to have them at senior executive grade. And we need architectural conservation officers in every local authority, not just the handful that we have. I think that needs to be addressed. There's a suite of policies that complement their work, such as Town Centres First, such as Housing for All, Places for People, Croí Cónaithe, Heritage Ireland 2030, and it's critically important that they are front and centre of the decision-making process. Again, I want to thank Senator David Noss for proposing this private member's bill, and reiterate that the Government does not oppose this bill or its intentions. And I just again to reassure that we will be taking the provisions set out in this bill to give consideration under this planning review, and the correspondence from Dublin Civic Trust and Atashka. We want to ensure that we take informed views on the review that makes it fit for purpose, that we have strong, rigorous enforcement, but also an enabling capacity to support premises owners, to support and enable our built heritage and our conservation to be brought up to a high standard, and see them as productive buildings, not see them as heritage for heritage's sake, that they should be a central component of our housing policy, central component of addressing issues around housing, and a central component of our just our cultural well-being and our sense of place. It's critically important, not just Dublin, it's right around the country. Our Irish towns are also hugely important. I recall Paddy Shaffrey's book, 1975, The Irish Town, An Approach to Survival, where he speaks about the heritage-led regeneration of our towns. So I think it's something that the timing of this bill in tandem with the review that's taking place couldn't be more appropriate, and couldn't be more appropriate that it was Senator Norris brought this bill to the House. So again, I want to thank all the members for their work on it, and all of the conservation organisations who have inputted into this really important bill. And finally, before I sit down, I want to welcome the pupils from, I'm not sure what school you're from.
Archfield, is it Archfield?
Archfield National School. You're very, very welcome here to the Shannon. It's great to have you here, so you're most welcome. Enjoy your day. So thank you again.